Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Fun with Maps. I'm your host Dan Hansen, and this episode of Fun with Maps is all over the place. I found this cool map. It's an old one. It's a Rand McNally visual relief, and you can see, I don't know how well you can see, but like here it's old enough. It's still the USSR here, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and a lot of the things are different. But it's a cool map, and it shows how things have changed in recent years. So today we're going to look at three different maps and two different songs actually. But the three different maps, we're going to be up in Scotland, in Europe here, in the UK. And then we're going to go over to British Columbia in the northwest here, Canada. And then we're going to go to what some people call the Conic Republic over here, just about 700 miles east of Australia. So what they have in common is they're all Caledonia or New Caledonia. So we're going to look at the three different maps of Caledonia and New Caledonia, and then we're going to consider a couple of songs. So speaking of songs, did you ever get confused about song lyrics? You know, the most famous is probably the Elton John song Tiny Dancer, and it really goes, hold me closer Tiny Dancer, but so many people misheard it and they think it's hold me closer Tony Danza, right? Probably heard of that. There's the classic song Drift Away by Dobie Gray, where he sings give me the Beat Boys and free my soul, but so many people think it's give me the Beach Boys and free my soul. The classic Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix, where he sings excuse me while I kiss the sky, but some people mishear it as excuse me while I kiss this guy. You know, so I just learned when I was doing this video that I've been making a similar mistake, but not that egregious, my whole life. So I'll tell you about that at the end with the song. In the meantime, in this episode of Fun with Maps, we're going to look at three maps of Caledonia, New Caledonia, on three different continents. Okay, let's start here, because this is where Caledonia, the first Caledonia, begins. This is a modern map, CIA map of the UK, okay? And, you know, we know this map. England, Wales, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, France, the English Channel. We've looked at some of this stuff here. Jersey and Guernsey. We've done Fun with Maps on that. The North Sea in here. But what I want you to pay attention to here is in Scotland, right? And we're going to look at this area here above Edinburgh, first to fourth. But see how Scotland is oriented. It's going north and south here, okay? That's how it is. That's how it's oriented correctly. Now let's take a look at an ancient map. So this is a map of the British Islands according to Ptolemy. Okay, it's an ancient map. And so here again, the English Channel, what's now Ireland, North Sea, Germany, all that. They call it the German Ocean here. But what's interesting here, here's Wales, England. See how they have what's Scotland oriented to the right? I mean, obviously this was wrong. We just saw from the modern map, Scotland is up here. It's oriented north-south. But they have it kicking off to the right here. The other interesting thing about this map is that it's called Caledonia. Okay? So, Caledonia was the Latin name used by the Roman Empire to refer to the part of Scotland north of the River Forth, which includes most of the land area of Scotland. So the old Roman Empire name, the Latin name for Scotland, was Caledonia. Even though this map of Ptolemy is oriented improperly, it does have the name Caledonia here for Scotland. So here's a map showing, you know, the highlands of Scotland and the lowlands of Scotland. So again, the North Sea up here, the Atlantic Ocean here, England, Northern Ireland, all that. Okay, so the River Forth is a major river in central Scotland. Okay, it's 29 miles long, and it drains into the North Sea. There's the North Sea over here on the east coast. The Gaelic name for the upper reach of the river above Stirling, and here's Stirling. Okay, it's Abendub, meaning Black River. So the Firth of Forth, it's not easy to say. Here's the Firth of Forth, is the estuary. A firth is just an estuary. Okay, so the Firth of Forth here is the estuary or firth of several Scottish rivers, including the River Forth, and it meets the North Sea here. You know, there's Edinburgh, the capital city of Scotland, and there's the Firth of Forth right above it. Here's a fun with maps fact. You may be familiar with the band Genesis' song called Firth of Fifth from their 1973 album Selling England by the Pound. And of course the title is a pun on the Firth of Forth, which is this estuary of the River of Forth here. So they had Firth of Fifth, which is a pun on the Firth of Forth here. Not easy to say. So here's another map based on Ptolemy's map. This is the peoples of northern Britain from about 150. Okay, so again, we just saw the Firth of Forth here. Right? Here's Caledonia. It's most of Scotland's called Caledonia. Okay. So the people in Caledonia were called Caledonians. You can also see two interesting areas. The Antonine Wall here, which leads into the Firth of Forth there, and Hadrian's Wall down here. Okay, they deserve their own episode of Fun with Maps. But briefly, the Antonine Wall here, it was a fortification made of turf on stone, and the Romans built it between the Firth of Clyde and the Firth of Forth. So Firth of Clyde over here, Firth of Forth over here. So they started building it in about 142 AD, and that was the order of Roman Emperor Antoninus Pius. So that's why it's Antonine's Wall. It's about 39 miles, about 10 feet high, 16 feet wide. Hadrian's Wall was built about 20 years earlier down here to the south. But really, these are two things you should really look at more of: Hadrian's Wall and Antonine's Wall if you're a history buff. This is another map of Antonine's Wall. This is created by Norman Einstein. So the Roman Empire occupied Scotland, and the area they called Caledonia was physically separated from the rest of the island by this wall, the Antonine Wall. Okay? You can see where that is there. And the whole idea was to extend Roman territory and dominance. First they had done this Hadrian's Wall down here, 100 miles to the south, and that used to be the frontier of Britannia. But the Roman says, all right, we're going to grab this land in here too and build a wall here, and then we're going to own everything. We're going to occupy everything below it. So the Romans did establish forts and temporary camps further north of the Antonine Wall here in Caledonia in Scotland because they wanted to protect their routes, but they didn't conquer the Caledonians. The Romans never did conquer the Caledonians, and they suffered a lot of attacks. So if you like war battles and strategy and all that, check out the story of the Hadrian and Antonine Walls. So Latin historians refer to the territory north of the Firth of Forth here, the River Forth, is Caledonia, and other ancient authors use the adjective Caledonian more generally to describe anything pertaining to inland or northern Britain. So some say the name is probably derived from a word in Common Britannic. There's a tribal name, Caledones, which means possessing hard feet, alluding to the standfastness or endurance of the people. There's also a Welsh word called hard, which could refer to the rocky land or the hardiness of the people. But in general, today, Caledonia is used as a romantic or poetic name for all of Scotland, which brings us to the first song. So the song Caledonia, it's a modern Scottish folk ballad written by Dougie MacLean in 1977. And the chorus of the song features the lyric, "Caledonia, you're calling me, and now I'm going home." So it's been covered by various artists, including Van Morrison.
and it's often dubbed Scotland's unofficial national anthem. There's also a song Caledonia by Robin Trower. Remember him from Procol Harum on one of his albums. But when you talk about Caledonia, it's kind of a romantic, poetic, historic name for Scotland. I know that my friend Bruce Gregg used to play in the Caledonia pipe band here. So Caledonia relates to Scotland. At least that's the first Caledonia. Now we're going to look at the second Caledonia. So this is a map of the northwest coast of North America and this whole area. So you can see up here, here's the Sea of Kamchatka and Russia, which we've talked about. We did an episode on. Here you'll see Alaska, but in this old map it says a Russian possession. So back then Alaska was still Russian. You know, this whole thing is the North Pacific Ocean. Here you can see on the map it says Caledonia. Okay, so New Caledonia, which is what this area is, New Caledonia, it was a fur trading district of the Hudson Bay Company. It's the north central portions of what today we call British Columbia in Canada. It wasn't a British colony, but it was part of the British claim to North America, and it's got its administrative center at Fort St. James. So here's a map of British Columbia, and you can see here's the 10 provinces of Canada. We've looked at them before, and here's the 3 territories. Can you remember? Can you name them? If not, take a look at the Fun with Maps episode on the Canadian provinces. 10 of them here and 3 territories. So this is British Columbia, red here, and this is Fort St. James right here, which we're talking about as the administrative center for New Caledonia. So the rest of what is now mainland British Columbia was called the Columbia Department by the British and the Oregon Country by the Americans. So even before the Oregon Treaty in 1846, New Caledonia was often used to describe anywhere in the mainland not in the Columbia Department, such as Fort Langley. Okay, so here's another look. For all intents and purposes, New Caledonia came into being with the establishment of the first British fur trading post west of the Rocky Mountains by Simon Fraser and his crew during explorations around 1805 to 1808. So Simon Fraser is attributed with naming the area New Caledonia because he said that the hills and woodlands there were reminiscent of the Scottish Islands. So this area was called New Caledonia because Simon Fraser thought that it resembled the Scottish Highlands. The boundaries were vague. You know, the eastern boundary, of course, of the Rocky Mountains, but it wasn't really clearly specified. So when westward migration of American settlers by the Oregon Trail led to the whole Oregon boundary dispute, they came up with the Oregon Treaty in 1846, and the entire British-held mainland north of the U.S. boundary and west of the Rockies was known as New Caledonia. So, big chunk of what we call British Columbia now. So this land called New Caledonia continued over the next few years. It was administered by the Hudson Bay Company. Their chief executive, James Douglas, was also the governor of Vancouver Island. And everything was cool as long as the European population remained small. And that was basically just the company employees and their families. But all that changed in 1858 because they found gold north of Yale. And so you had the Fraser Canyon gold rush, and you got 20 to 30,000 people coming in, mostly American. So Douglas, you know, he says, we can't have this many people. So he says, we're going to put a gunboat at the mouth of the Fraser River to try to collect license fees from prospectors who are trying to travel upstream and find gold. So the British government then, the colonial office, was prompted into action. So they passed legislation, and they designated New Caledonia a crown colony on August 2nd, 1858. So the name given the new entity was the Colony of British Columbia, and the new capital, New Westminster, was established on the southern reaches of the Fraser River. Okay. So the name New Caledonia is still used in official and commercial names in the region. So, like, there's a College of New Caledonia, there's a Diocese of Caledonia and Prince George, and things like that. But you can see from this map, we're over here, Northwest Canada, British Columbia, all of that. This green area here is the watershed of the Fraser River. Here's Vancouver down here. And of course, you know, this is what they're trying to block. People coming up the Fraser River to get gold, to try to find gold. Alright, so now let's look at the third and final Caledonia, the New Caledonia in Oceania, the Pacific, whatever you want to call it. This is a map from someone called Tubbs. Okay. Obviously, here's Australia and New Zealand. We've got Indonesia up here. This area here is New Caledonia. It's a group of islands in the Southwest Pacific Ocean. It's about 140 miles south of Vanuatu up here, and 750 miles east of Australia. Of course, that's there. And it's it's 10,000 miles away from France, but it's what's called a sui generis collectivity of the French Republic. So it's a legal status unique in overseas France, and it's actually enshrined in a chapter of the French Constitution. So New Caledonia has the status of an overseas territory from 1946 to 1998, but they came out with an accord and it gained a special status. So a New Caledonian citizenship was established in addition to the French citizenship, so they've got both of them, and a gradual transfer of power from the French state to New Caledonia itself was begun to last from 15 to 20 years. So here it is in the Pacific Ocean here. We'll take a closer look. This is a map of New Caledonia from space. It's just this archipelago here in the Pacific. This big strip here, that's Grande Terre, big land. It's got the Loyalty Islands over here, the Chesterfield Islands, the Bellep Archipelago, the Isle of Pines, a few other remote inlets. So you can see here, this is what it looks like from space. So we're covering, you know, their independence, and this process was going on, but it was subject to approval in a referendum. So they had three independence referendums, 2018, 2020, and 2021. And the first two referendums, the yes vote for independence was 43.3 and 46.7% respectively. So it didn't pass. So they did a third in December 2021, but the native indigenous Kanak community, which is 42% of the population, boycotted it. They said there were issues with COVID and everything else. So the yes vote was only 3.5%, and the turnout was less than 44%. So they have not been able to pass this referendum for a new state. So this is a clearer map of the New Caledonia, Nouvelle Calédonie. Again, this big area is Grande Terre. Okay. The Coral Sea's over here. Here's Bellep Island, Île Bellep. These are the Loyalty Islands. Okay. Got the Chesterfield Islands. That's a pretty good map of New Caledonia. Another map, this is by Norman Einstein again. It gives a little more perspective in the world order here. So, of course, Australia here, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Sea, the Solomon Islands. Here we are in the South Pacific. Tasman Sea down here. Remember we looked at Tasmania in a previous episode. This is all the Coral Sea, right? And here's New Caledonia. Well, here's Vanuatu. Here's New Caledonia with Grande Terre and the Loyalty Islands and some of the smaller islands there. Okay, so the Coral Sea here, it's off the northeast coast of Australia. It's about 1,200 miles down this Australian coast here. And this was the area of the Battle of the Coral Sea, a major confrontation during World War II between Japan and the U.S. and Australia. And, you know, everyone knows the Coral Sea because it's got the world's largest reef system, the Great Barrier Reef, which was declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO in 1981. So here's the Coral Sea, and along here is the Great Barrier Reef. And of course, here's New Caledonia. So this map, you know, we see the Coral Sea, South Pacific. It doesn't say Grande Terre here, it just says New Caledonia, which, because it's the biggest area by far, I guess that's why they drew it that way. But here's the Loyalty Islands. You can see them a little bigger. New Caledonia as a whole has a land area of about 7,100 square miles, and it's got the 3 provinces. North on the Grande Terre, south on Grande Terre, and then the Loyalty Islands province over here. It's got the 4 inhabited islands off the east coast of the mainlands. So we've got Uvia, Lifu, Tiga, and Marais. So those are the Loyalty Islands, part of New Caledonia. So the population of New Caledonia, it's only about 270,000 people. That's from the October 2019 census. And it really varies by geography. So in the north here, and the Loyalty Islands, you've got a lot of the indigenous native Kanak people. And down here in the south, it's a little more wealthy, and it's got more Europeans, some Kanaks, Polynesians, and smaller groups from Southeast Asia. And that's where the capital is. So up here in the north, Grande Terre and the Loyalty Islands, it's mostly Kanaks, and down here it's mostly the European settlers and Asian settlers. So this is a map by someone named T.S. Chubby, and it shows, okay, here's the Loyalty Islands, and Bellup up here, and Pine Island. This is the Grande Terre. Here's the northern province. Here's the southern province, which you just saw. And down here is Noumea, which is the capital and largest city of New Caledonia. It's also the largest French-speaking city in all of Oceania. Okay, so this whole thing is Grande Terre, but it's divided into north and south. And Noumea here is on a peninsula. You know, it's you can see it's in a protected deep water harbor, so it's the chief port, and that's why it became the capital. It's just so geographically attractive. This is a map it's a topographic map of what's called Zealandia. This map is by Ulrich Lang, and New Caledonia, of course, would be part of this. See New Caledonia up here. Okay, so here's New Zealand, Australia, the Tasman Sea, Pacific Ocean, New Caledonia. So Zealandia, this is a fragment. There used to be what they called Gondwana supercontinent, part of Oceania, and they're saying that New Caledonia probably separated from Australia about 66 million years ago, started drifting northeasterly, and it reached its present position about 50 million years ago. And the first settlements were around the coast, of course, and date back to the period about 1100 BC to 200 AD. British explorer James Cook was one of the first Europeans to sight New Caledonia in 1774 during his second voyage, and he's the one who named this land New Caledonia because, once again, the northeast of the island reminded him of Scotland. Sound familiar? So we've got the original Caledonia, which is Scotland. Then we've got New Caledonia because it reminded the people in modern-day British Columbia of the Scottish Highlands. And here's James Cook in the Pacific Ocean here naming this area New Caledonia as well because it reminded him of Scotland. So in 1853, Emperor Napoleon III said, okay, let's grab New Caledonia as a possession. And what they did, they made it a penal colony. You know, we've heard about this with Australia and New Zealand and others. So from the 1860s until almost 1900, France sent about 22,000 criminals and political prisoners to New Caledonia here. Then in 1864, they found nickel, a lot of the element nickel on the banks of the Diahad River. Now, you would think that would be good for everyone, but the native Kanak people were excluded from the French economy and from mining work, so they basically put them on reservations, and this led to some violence, and the high chief of the Kanaks united many of the central tribes, and they launched a guerrilla war, and about 200 Frenchmen and 1,000 Kanaks were killed. You know, it's the same old story that we've seen all over the world, and it happened here in what we call New Caledonia as well. So this is a historical map. It shows the, we talked about the Battle of the Coral Sea, right? So here's the Coral Sea in here. Here's Australia. Here's New Guinea, Borneo, Java, Thailand, all of that. New Zealand down here. Here's New Caledonia, the Grand Island, the Loyalty Islands here. New Hebrides, which is now Vanuatu. Okay. But what's interesting about this, in March 1942, with the assistance of Australia, New Caledonia here became a very important Allied base. So the main South Pacific Fleet base in the U.S. Navy in the South Pacific moved to Noumea. Remember the capital down here of New Caledonia in 1942. And that fleet turned back the Japanese Navy in the Battle of the Coral Sea in May of 1942. Okay? So American troops stationed on New Caledonia numbered as many as 50,000, which was, that matched the entire local population at the time. And it's really a fascinating battle. If you see, these are the advances, the Japanese thrusts with these solid red arrows, and the potential threats are the broken red arrows. These things here, this is a line of defense, the Malay barrier all along here. It's really a fascinating battle. You should just check it out if this is the kind of thing you're into. But this is, you can see the role that New Caledonia and the capital of Noumea played in World War II. So by 1953, all New Caledonians were given French citizenship, regardless of ethnicity. So citizens of France, their French nationality, they can vote for the president of France. They have the right to vote in elections to the European Parliament. Since 1986, though, the UN Committee on Decolonization includes New Caledonia on the UN list of non-self-governing territories. But, as we said, they've had 3 referendums, and independence has been rejected by the majority all 3 times. So, the official name of the area, Nouvelle Caledonie, New Caledonia, it could be changed in the near future. They're trying to come up with a name, a flag, an anthem, a motto, design of banknotes, all that. They want to express the Kanak identity in the future shared by all parties, but Kanak Republic instead of New Caledonia is popular about 40% of the population, and that's about what the population of Kanaks is, so it's no surprise there. So it's still up in the air, but here's a fun with maps fact. Sheldon Cooper, The Big Bang Theory, right, did his fun with flags. So this is for you, Sheldon. In 2010, the Congress of New Caledonia voted in favor of the wish to fly the Kanak flag of the independence movement alongside the French tricolor. It says dual flag. So here's the Kanak flag for independence. Here's the French tricolor, and this photo by Georges Jalrigue shows that. It's not legally binding. It's controversial. Some places fly both flags. Some only do one or the other. And it's a constant battleground. And it's even led to the coalition government collapsing in 2011.
So, wow, 3 Caledonias, right? So you know about the Scottish folk ballad called Caledonia. It's kind of their unofficial second national anthem. But what about the other song that I told you about in my era? So for years I've been listening to a song that I thought was called Caledonia. It's a jump blues song. It was first recorded in 1945 by Louis Jordan and his Timpani Five. It was a hit for Jordan. A lot of people covered it. James Brown, Muddy Waters, Little Richard, B.B. King, Louis Armstrong, Harry Connick Jr., people like that. But let me read you some of the lyrics. Walking with my baby, she's got great big feet. She's long, lean, and lanky and ain't had nothing to eat. She's my baby and I love her just the same. Crazy about that woman because Caledonia is her name. So be glad I'm not singing it. But anyway, the verse concludes with the refrain, Caledonia, Caledonia, what makes your big head so hard? I love her just the same. Crazy about that woman because Caledonia is her name. So what's the problem? It turns out it's not Caledonia with an E in there, like these countries we just looked at, but Caledonia without an E, and it's got nothing to do with the maps or the countries or the places we've just covered. In fact, when you do the research, the name Caledonia itself, it doesn't even have any relation to or meaning to that song. It's just a name chosen by the songwriter. He's conveying his love and longing for this girl, Caledonia, but it just fit in really well with his music. So it's got nothing to do with Caledonia. I always thought it was Caledonia. That's not really that bad. It's not as bad as my friends thinking that AC/DC was singing Dirty Jeans, Dungarees instead of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. So, I hope you enjoyed the Caledonias in this episode of Fun with Maps. Give us a like or a comment and, make sure you subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. As always, I'm your host, Dan Hansen, and keep on having fun with maps.